Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, October 27th, 2011. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week behind the scenes of our Basic Brewing Video Halloween episode, Melon Blood. Steve and I brew up a watermelon wheat beer with his idea of using watermelon juice instead of water in the mash. How did it turn out? Stay tuned. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. Also, you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james. And we also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video fan page on Facebook, too, at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us first and click on our associate link. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we appreciate your support, especially with Christmas coming up. And there's now an amazon.co.uk link on there, too. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too. And you can find our Basic Brewing iPhone and Android podcast apps on their respective stores, and we're on the BlackBerry podcast directory now, too. An experiment update. This week I plan on bottling the Belgian that I brewed for the current Brew Your Own magazine, Basic Brewing Radio Collaborative Experiment. I split the batch and fermented half in a glass carboy and half in a plastic bucket to see if there's any difference in the performance of the fermentation or the taste or the smells or anything of the beers. Same wort, different vessels. You're invited to play along to see if fermenter composition and shape makes a difference on your homebrew, on the homebrew scale. The deadline is November 28th, the Monday after Thanksgiving, so I think you still have plenty of time. Got some interesting email after last week's show about spontaneously fermented homebrew. This comes from Justin in Eugene, Oregon. Justin says, just got done listening to the podcast on spontaneous fermenting. I, too, did a spontaneous fermentation, but a slightly different way. I picked about 4 ounces of blackberries that had been growing in my backyard, wild, and put them into a 10-20 starter wort with 20% of the wort comprised of apple juice, per Vinnie Cilurzo. I did the same with 3 local organic peaches. I built up both starters to around 1035, 2 liters. After brewing the wort and cooling as normal, I added the starters in their entirety, fruit and all, to the fermenter with 5 ounces of French oak cubes that were previously used to revive a red wine barrel, and a handful of grapes. After 3 weeks, the beer had gone from 1057 to 1005. It had a light, clean tartness, mild funk, clean fermentation character, no diacetyl, acetaldehyde, or hot alcohols, and it had a slight fruitiness and very little oak. I am, of course, going to let it go for quite a few months more to allow any Brett to do work. And if it doesn't funk up the way I'd like, I will probably add some Brett to it myself. I was so pleased with the way it turned out so far, I used the yeast to ferment some cider I had. After a few days, it has a nice, dense krausen. Very cool. Austin, Justin. In a similar note, I've seen a cooking show where the baker used grapes in a flour slurry, sort of, to get a sourdough starter going for bread. So, pretty cool. There is yeast on the fruit, so if you can find some local fruit that hadn't been sprayed with pesticides and all that stuff, might be a fun way to try that out. Thank you, sir. Pretty cool idea. This comes in from John in Bangor, Maine. John says, I just listened to the Spontaneous Homebrew episode and am impressed with Ken Valley's makeshift cool ship idea. I have a different method for those of us whose apartment situation would make a cool ship impractical or impossible. Last year, also inspired by Allagash, I made a starter by mixing flour and water, Then let that spontaneously ferment much the way you would make a sourdough starter. Then I pitch that into my wort the same way you would pitch any yeast starter. Not only is this a lot less messy, but it also gives you the peace of mind of knowing there is active yeast in your wort. Just thought I'd share a less intimidating way to ferment using your own wild yeast culture. You know, I've gotten email from brewers in the past saying, can you use sourdough starter in a beer? And well, there you go. That's sounds exactly what John has done. I appreciate you sharing that. It sounds like a good solution for those of us who don't have a screened-in porch like Ken Valley does. And finally, this one comes from another John. Not sure where this John's from. Just listen to the Spontaneous Fermentation podcast. One interesting note, one of the speakers on the podcast, Steve, mentioned that it might be interesting to put out a petri dish to see what grows in your area, your brew house, etc. There was a sadly short-lived series on the Discovery Channel called Brewmasters. Brewmasters chronicled some of the daily trials, tribulations, and general brewing undertakings of Sam Calagione at Dogfish Head. In that series, Sam went to Egypt to study and attempt to brew an ancient beer recipe discovered written on the inside of a tomb. In order to get an authentic yeast for that beer, Sam did precisely what was suggested on your podcast. If memory serves, he crushed up some dates and other local fruit, set it next to the dish, and left it out in a Cairo park overnight. He then sealed and packaged the dishes and sent them to a Belgian yeast lab for analysis. The lab isolated and propagated a brewing yeast that was in fact found growing on the dish. John says, the show sadly didn't last long, and full episodes do not appear to be found on Discovery's site. But if you Google Discovery Channel Brewmasters and follow the links to the Discovery Channel site, they still have information about the show, including several short video segments. In the Ancient Ale episode, there is a video segment for Wild Yeast Hunt. It is at least a small part of what the show aired of Sam's quest for a local spontaneous yeast. Appreciate that, John. I did see that show, and I forgot about it when we were talking about the Petri dish and all that. So I appreciate the reminder. And I wouldn't be surprised, I haven't checked, but I wouldn't be surprised if that show isn't on iTunes, available for renting or purchasing. So there you go. Thanks for the emails. Good topical emails this week. A little background on this week's show. If you've already seen the Basic Brewing video episode, then you know what this is all about. Steve Wilkes and I have started a little tradition, goofy as it may be, where we dress up for Halloween and shoot an episode where we kind of stretch the envelope a little bit. In previous years, we've brought old yeast back to life for zombie beers and such, but Steve really punched through the envelope for this year's beer. Steve's idea was to make a watermelon wheat beer, but instead of water in the mash, he wanted to use watermelon juice. So all the water for the brew would come from the fruit, from the watermelon, and not the faucet. Now, I was really excited about this, as you can understand, and if you watch the video episode, you'll see as it's brewing, the beer looks stunning. It really looks cool. Did it taste equally stunning? You'll have to stay tuned. Now, you'll hear 3 segments, 2 recorded on Brew Day and 1 on the day that we tasted. But before we get into the interviews, check this out. I got this email this week from James in South Carolina, who is asking for some recipe formulation advice. James says, I live in South Carolina, and pineapple is, of course, a sign of hospitality, so I wanted to make a 5-gallon batch of pineapple wheat beer. I want a 60% wheat beer, copper color, and really pineapple. So far, I narrowed my ingredients for this first try to dark wheat, pale wheat, Cara wheat for the 60%, and 40% Vienna malt. I don't know how much of each I need. I'm also contemplating between 50 and 100% of my liquid to be pineapple juice. I was inspired by your boil-in-the-bag method, so I'm going to try that, since this will also be my first non-extract brew as I move toward all grain. That should be brew in a bag, not boil in a bag. You don't want to boil in a bag. But anyway, Weird, huh? That the timing of James's email that he wanted to brew with pineapple juice instead of water with a wheat beer. In the same week, they were airing episodes on brewing watermelon wheat beers with just watermelon. Eerie. Well, in the Halloween spirit, here we are standing in the kitchen talking over a boiling blood red-colored pot of stuff.
Yeah, and that stuff is made up of pure watermelon juice. So it's a watermelon wheat, 100% wheat.
Yeah, how crazy is that? Now you came up with this idea. Now how did you you wanted to do a watermelon wheat, and you did some research out on the web, and what did you find?
Well, I found that a lot of people make them, and that they're mostly made. The watermelon is added in the secondary, usually as chunks of watermelon. That's how it seems like most people do it. Not me.
It'd be the coward's way out.
That's the coward's way out. I spent last night juicing 2 large watermelons, and so we got 3 gallons of watermelon juice. And so we're making a 2.5-gallon batch of watermelon wheat, but we're using your style of wheat beer, which is 100% wheat. There's no barley in this beer at all. That has a lot of alliteration.
So I would be willing to bet that this is the first time this beer, or this style of beer, has ever been brewed, ever in the world, like Johnny Carson. Ever!
Ever. I would say that no one has thought of this before.
You are wrong, watermelon breath.
Right. Well, so we were sitting around in not a drunken stupor, but some kind of stupor, and talking about beers and wacky things, and actually I had juiced a watermelon because I'd made a watermelon salad. I made a fruit salad, and I took all the pulp out and I juiced it, and then I saved the juice back, and we ended up making margaritas with it and sorbet and stuff like that. But then, of course, I had to think, well, why couldn't I make beer with this? So I told you about it, and here we are today making this beer.
I think, in theory, it's genius. Of course, we'll find out if it's genius or not, because this is similar to the maple sap beer that Andy and I made with Casey and Jen at their house, where all of the brewing water was maple sap from a tree. There was no added tap water or filtered water or spring water or anything. All the brewing water came from that tree. This is a similar. Your idea was, instead of using water and then adding juice to or pulp or whatever to the secondary, just use watermelon juice as the brewing water.
Yeah, and so at least at the moment, we're in the boil right now, and it smells and we tasted a little bit of the wort, and it tastes watermelony. Mm-hmm. I mean, the things I'm worried about is that will the boil drive off the watermelon flavor and esters? We'll find out. And will the boil drive off the lovely red color? It appears to be not doing that. And we had some discussion about that earlier with the Frankenberry Weiss that we made, where it started out pink and ended up normal.
Right.
So we'll see what this one does.
Well, that was red dye number 4 or whatever, red dye number 3 or whatever. And I'm sure that it got boiled off and changed chemically. Now we're only about 10 minutes into the boil, and it is darkening a little bit. But I think that it'll still have a red hue at the end of it.
Yeah, I think it will too. It'll have a rosy red hue.
She used to be performing downtown.
That's right. She's in the Catskills now. Now
we have, you got, as you said, 3 gallons of watermelon juice. Now, how did you get the juice out of the watermelon?
I cut them open, and
Step one.
I went to the store and bought a watermelon. And so anyway, I opened the watermelon up and just as neatly as I could, took the pulp out, and I placed what I did is I ran it through a fine sieve. So I just had a colander that had a really fine mesh screen, and I just kind of, at first I was using a spoon and a spatula to kind of force it through, and that was too much work. So I just washed my hands really well and used my fingers, and it's just like playing in mud or something, and just work all that juice out of it the best you can. I did try to strain it through a cheesecloth, but there was so much fine pulp. I mean, really fine pulp, like the fiber that you would, like Metamucil kind of pulp. And it got clogged in the cheesecloth, and it would have taken days for it to drip through. So we skipped that step. Although when we made the beer, you had a brew in the bag, and we ran it through that, and that seemed to pull out a significant amount of that pulp. So, excuse my senior moment there. But and then we're just making a straight ahead 100% wheat beer with what do we got? 4 pounds of malted wheat. And some Magnum, just like 6 grams of Magnum hops at 14.4 alpha acid.
Yeah, so what we did was we took a gravity reading with a refractometer of the watermelon juice and got 6.8 bricks, which I believe translated to 1.027, so 1027, just the juice itself.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And you said that you'd read some accounts online of people making watermelon wine.
Yeah, which actually is kind of intriguing. And I might revisit that because watermelons are cheap right now. They're kind of everywhere. And, it was so easy. It only took me about an hour to pull the juice out of these 2, really big watermelons, the big old-fashioned kind of watermelons. And I got 3 gallons of juice out of that. So not a whole lot of effort. And the recipes I saw for the watermelon wine were kind of neat, but I'm opposed to cane sugar generally. And so all of the recipes seem to call for so many cups of cane sugar to get the alcohol potential up. And that I need to think about that some, but it looks like it would be pretty easy to do. And you might get a nice novelty, kind of dessert thing that you could do at Thanksgiving or something like that for not much investment. A little champagne yeast and you're home free.
Yeah. So what we did was we did brew in a bag, as you said, and after we just poured the juice into the bag, which was in the pot, and then took out the bag, which took out some pulp. And you'll see video of this on the Basic Brewing video episode that we're also shooting at the same time. So then we meaning you, rinsed the pulp out of the bag and then put it back in. We heated the juice, the watermelon juice, up to 162 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm sorry I don't know the metric equivalent, but I wanted to get a mash temperature, single infusion mash temperature of around 154 degrees Fahrenheit, because my thinking was that the sugar that is in the watermelon is going to be pretty darn fermentable.
Yeah.
And we don't want a thin beer, so I wanted to mash a bit high, mash the wheat. We put 4 pounds of malted wheat in there. We wanted to mash that a bit high to see if we could get some more sort of unfermentable sugars.
Yeah, get some body in the beer, and which I'm sure that will be the case. I'm a little bit concerned about chill haze and the boiling up the fruit juice. That's just an appearance thing, though, so I'm not worried about that in flavor. But I'm just curious how this will come out.
Yeah, I don't know anything about canning or jellies or anything like that, although I did read a recipe for watermelon jelly where you're supposed to add pectin, so maybe that means that watermelon doesn't have it. I don't know. We'll have to do some research on the pectin thing. Yeah. I know peaches have pectin in it, right?
Yes. Yeah, I believe so.
So, I mean, this is an experiment. This is the beauty of this thing, is that we will come out with something that nobody else in the world has done, we think.
And what's cool, too, is that we're not making 5 gallons, so this is not a small batch in the sense of a 1 gallon batch, but this was so easy to do, and also kind of brewing collaboratively. So I juiced the watermelons, and you got the grain, and here we are today making the beer, and it makes it many hands make for light work.
Yeah, especially when you're doing most of it. So we looked, and we wanted. And by the way, the pre-boil volume was just under 3 gallons, because we took the bag of grain out after an hour and put it in the colander and squeezed it and got nearly all the water out. So we're just shy of 3 gallons. The pre-boil gravity was 12.6 bricks, which turns out to be 1050. So about half of the fermentables, it turns out, have come from the watermelon juice, and about half has come from the wheat, which is very interesting to me. And how would you describe the taste of the the wort after mashing?
Well, it tasted very much like watermelon juice, as you would expect, or not, because it's been at a fairly high heat for a while, and I didn't know how much of that flavor would be driven off. Not much, but then it also had that nice bready component that the wheat gave it. So it's very tasty. It's really tasted good. It really smelled and smells to me a little bit like baking a sweet bread, like a quick bread, that you would bake around Christmas time. And although we've added some hops in now, so you're getting that, it smells like a beer. Mm-hmm. But
to me, the wort, before we put the hops in, we haven't tasted it afterwards, but before we put the hops in, it was, I think I described it as watermelon plus.
Yeah.
Because you get the flavor of the watermelon, but it was even sweeter than the watermelon juice was, because now you've got the the sugar from the malted wheat in there too.
Mm-hmm. And well, it's just very interesting to me what this is going to be like. I don't have much to add to what you just said. It's just it's a crazy beer. It's just like,
and
what are we doing?
And we put 6 grams of Magnum because we used the Daniels formula to come up with about, what did we say, 19 IBUs or something like that. So we don't want the hops to be featured in this. We're only doing 1 60-minute edition. Magnum, 6 grams of 14.4% alpha acid Magnum pellets. Because we just want the hops to offset the sweetness. We don't want this to be way sweet. Right. So how's it looking now? Let's walk it over to the...
Yeah.
It's got a bit of a would you call that a scum on the top?
I'll tell you what it looks like to me. It looks like red velvet cake.
You're right.
Isn't that? That's the same color as a red velvet cake.
Do you think we should skim that?
Well, maybe.
Yeah, it's getting kind of a skimmy looking. Maybe that is, I don't know. We'll have to do research on whether that's pectin or not. But
I need a little. Oh, here.
Yeah, we'll put it in there. We're just going to skim off this skin. And
whatever it is, we're getting rid of it.
Yeah. Won't hurt anything. But
that's all the watermelon flavor.
Yeah, all the water. Here, taste it. It's hot. Yeah, right now 50% of our audience is saying, sure, that's a good idea to skim it. And the other 50% is saying, no, that's a bad idea.
That's all the flavor.
So, well, it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
So maybe after it cools, we put it on the compost, in the compost bucket. So maybe we'll taste it later. I don't know. We're seeing a bunch of particulate matter in there, but I think that's the wheat. I mean, that to me looks like 100% wheat beer after the hot break. The protein has started coagulating in there. I'll be really interested to see how much trub that we get out of this. I bet we get a fair amount.
Yeah, I think so, because I think there's a lot of that watermelon pulp that's going to settle out.
Mm-hmm. And the like I say, the protein from the wheat. But we'll boil for a while. At 15 minutes, we'll put Irish moss in there, and we'll put the wort chiller in there to sanitize. And we'll get our. We're just going to use a packet of Saf Ale USO5, because again, we're not looking for yeast flavor here. And then my plan is to let it ferment out and then put some more juice in there, in the traditional way. Yeah,
I think so. And then let that work for a little while as a secondary, not a dead back sweeten, but a secondary fermentation. And it should be delicious.
Yeah, so we may check back in at the end of the cooling after we taste the wort as it's going into the fermenter. Stay tuned. So here we are. We're out on the patio, and we're getting some clouds. Maybe we'll get a little rain. It's a beautiful day, and it's been a beautiful brewing day. This has been, knock wood, no hitches, and the beer's in the fermenter, and it's got the yeast on it, and everything looks good.
And it still tastes like watermelon.
Yes, we tasted it. We did with a sanitized spoon. We dipped it in there and got our refractometer sample, and then we tasted samples, and it still tastes like watermelon.
I can't wait for this beer to come to fruition. I think it's going to be wonderful. Speaking of wonderful, we're drinking your rehydrated yeast experiment right now, and it's wonderful.
Oh, what's that last part?
Wonderful.
Oh. I took the mic back before the compliment was given. I don't want to do that. Well, thank you.
Really good.
Well, these are leftovers in the basement, and this is you're drinking the hydrated dried yeast, and I'm drinking the sprinkled dried yeast, and this was the second wort. So these are higher gravity beers, and we're surrounded by dogs because
That's a good thing.
It's about supper time.
Yeah.
So when we left off, we were boiling, and we had skimmed some scum, and the scum a little bit more reappeared, but I said, to heck with it, I don't want to worry about it. And the wort got a little darker. It's lost some of that redness.
Yeah. It's still reddish, but it's lost that really bright pink or bright red watermelon color, and that's okay. I hope it'll retain some of that, but I'm more interested in the flavor than the appearance. And I'm also encouraged that the wort seemed like it cleared mightily, meaning I was really worried about it being very hazy. Now, it might still become a hazy beer, I don't know, but at least at the moment, it appears to have cleared to a brilliant clear.
Yeah, we let it set after we chilled it. We let it sit in the kettle for a little while, and the top of the beer was clearing out. Now there is a bunch of trub in there because it is a brew in the bag beer. It is a wheat beer, and there's probably some pulp issues still from the juice maybe, but that'll all fall out in the fermenter, and it'll just be a matter of how much clear beer we can get off the top of that.
Yeah, that's going to be the temptation is going to be to want to pull all that beer out of there, and you'll end up with an interesting cookie.
Yeah. Why is the last quarter of my beer lighter than the rest of it? Oh, don't worry about that. Just you can swirl it up if you like. It's a Hefeweizen. That's what it is.
We call it a pink and tan.
Now we're debating what to call what to name the beer, what to refer to. We did the Monster Mash or whatever. It's with a Halloween theme. We gotta come up with that, but we got a little time.
We've got a little time to play with it.
So, and we aerated with a new toy.
Oh, I love that. I want to make stuff with it. It looks like something a dental hygienist would use, or a proctologist. I'm not sure which.
I got one of those. What do you call them? A hand mixer, whatever those things are that you see people on TV making mayonnaise with it. With just putting the oil in the thing.
It's a hand blender.
Hand blender. Okay.
And I have one too, but I just have the little blades. But you've actually got the whisk thing, and wow, it was great.
Because we're using the little, I'm going to say it, the little Mr. Beer plastic keg, and usually I shake the fermenter, but there's no way to really shake that. So to get good aeration, even though we pitched a whole packet of USO5 into the 2.5 gallons, so we probably had plenty of yeast in there. Probably didn't even really need to aerate, but just for safety's sake. We sanitized that whisk thing, and boy, it really whipped up the foam.
It did look like we were making a mousse.
Watermelon mousse.
Yeah. He used to be on Rocky.
Yeah. Hello. Watch me pull a rabbit out of this hat. Must be the wrong hat.
Yeah, I got a new hat.
I'm better at Rocky than I am Bullwinkle.
Yeah, I don't do either one.
Well, that's what else? I mean, all we got to do is wait for it to ferment, and then once the primary fermentation starts to subside, I'm not going to rack it into a secondary. I'm just going to pour. And we got our yield in the brew pot was 2 1/4 gallons. So your suggestion was to just put a quart of watermelon juice in there after the primary fermentation is done.
Yeah, and then let it go through a secondary, and it'll brighten the flavor up a little bit again, and also give us the volume that we were after, and I think it'll be a great Halloween beer.
I'm excited. I'm really excited. I think this is going to be a fun beer, unless something dramatic happens in the fermenter. But I can't foresee anything. We did everything right.
Yeah, it's just a 1060 beer that's getting ready to be really tasty.
Yeah, did we say it was 1060? It's 1060. That's a big beer. I wasn't planning on it being this big.
Yeah, that's a big old wheat beer. You don't hear about wheat beers being that big. At least not in this part of the world.
Or it's a big watermelon wheat. We gotta come up with a new style.
I know.
For wheat, for fruit beers that have no barley and get half their fermentables from actual juice and half from wheat. Send in your suggestions.
That's right. We need some help with this. We need some help naming this beer. And the style.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun.
It's been a wonderful day. Cheers.
Cheers.
And thanks for providing Studio A.
Thanks for providing the watermelon. That was a lot of work.
It wasn't too bad. I juiced them last night about 11 o'clock.
Yeah. Do you want to tell a story about that?
Well, I guess I could. I bought the watermelon and got home with it, and then got busy making dinner for the family and eating dinner with the family and all that stuff, and forgot about it. Forgot about the shoot. Forgot about everything, and it was just time to go to bed. So I'm lying in bed, not being able to go to sleep for some reason, and then I realized why. It's because I had to juice these dang watermelons. So at first I was just going to get up about 5 this morning and do it, and decided that was a really dumb idea. Mm-hmm. So I just got up and threw on a T-shirt, and it would have made for great video, but I'm glad no one was there.
Steve in his skivvies in a T-shirt, and they're squeezing watermelon pulp.
Well, that's how I'm an entrepreneur, you know. That's how I'm starting my watermelon pulp mega empire.
Just got to work on that logo.
Well, I need a good marketing company. If anybody knows one. Yeah, I need my image burnished.
We all know how painful that can be.
That's right.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
It's been a great day.
Happy Halloween.
Happy brewing.
Okay, here it is. It's about a month and a half since we brewed the watermelon beer, and we just tasted it, and we just recorded a video episode tasting it for a Halloween show. And what do you think, Steve?
Not our best effort.
Well, the effort, I think, was good.
Yeah, no, you're right. The effort was perfectly good. The beer is interesting, to be kind, and it certainly brewed well. So there aren't any flaws as in it's infected or anything like that. And it certainly tastes like watermelon to me. I think I got more of a watermelon flavor than you did. I might be wrong, but that was my impression. But the flavors just aren't working for me, and so good effort, but maybe not the best use of watermelon juice.
What are the flavors that you got? I mean, we expected to kind of a bright watermelony, nothing but watermelon flavors, with a little bit of a wheat backbone. What did you get?
I got kind of cloudy watermelon flavors. So I certainly tasted watermelon, but it wasn't that, middle of July bright, watermelon flavor. So I think I was expecting kind of a Jolly Rancher, kind of candy, which I know people that don't eat Jolly Ranchers won't know, but there's kind of a bright tartness to that flavor, to that candy. And that's really what I was expecting. Instead, it was kind of a muddy watermelon flavor. I think probably the wheat, kind of the breadiness, dulled the brightness of the watermelon. And of course, we did boil it for 60 minutes, so that would have dulled those flavors as well. You back sweetened it with a quart of watermelon juice. It's possible that that's the only watermelon we were tasting at that point. I don't really know. But, so, the beer was kind of one of those ones where you take a sip and you go, let me think about this.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I got on the nose, I got a little bit of watermelon, but I got kind of a yeasty, bready kind of a thing going on. And then the flavor, to me, was a bit the body was a bit thin. The fermentables were about half and half wheat and watermelon juice. So I'm wondering if there was more of a ratio of wheat to watermelon juice, whether that would have helped it, be a better mouth feel beer. It was a little bit kind of winey to me, and a little bit thin and winey. So maybe part of the problem was a bit of the sugar ratios there.
I think that you're right. I think that if I were to try to make this kind of beer again, I would make a standard wheat beer, and I would just back sweeten it with some watermelon juice and let it go at that.
Just like the traditional way.
Exactly.
Well, but you never know what you'll find out when you try something. I mean, we did the Casey and Jen and Andy and I did that the maple sap beer using nothing but maple sap as the brewing water, and that turned out awesome.
Yeah, that was a good beer. I remember that beer, and I wasn't involved in brewing it, but I got to drink a little of it, and it was very good.
But this, however, it was a different story. I mean, it's not putrid by any means, but it's just not. It's not there. It's not a drinkable beer. And probably the most shocking thing that I can say about this beer was that the watermelon juice was blood red. I mean, it was just bright red. And then in the kettle, as it was boiling, it was just deep red. And I thought, man, this is really going to be a red beer. This is going to be really shocking to look at. But when we looked at it,
looked like Miller High Life.
Yeah, it just looked like a pale golden beer. I mean, there was no pink to it at all.
It's actually a very pretty beer. If you just want to look at it, it's beautiful.
We'll be using it in photo shoots.
That's right. It'll be our photo shoot beer from now on. Well, I don't really know what else to say about this beer. There's nothing wrong with it in terms of how it was brewed. The flavors just don't work together. I think that you got a big astringency. I got it as it warmed up a little bit, and I think that's probably because the juice had so much, I don't know, I'm not a chemist, but proteins and things like that in it that just added some flavors that weren't desirable. I'm kind of glad that we did it. It was fun to do, and it was a great experiment, and we proved that it will mash and brew, but suitable for Halloween.
Yeah, you will technically get a beer out of the process, but it's not one that I would pass on to someone else.
Well, if someone knocks on my door and says trick or treats, I think I'll do a trick. Card this treat.
Card them first. Yeah. Make sure they're 21. Well, all right. It was a valiant effort, and I'm not going to let this back me off of doing other crazy, wacky stuff, because we've done other crazy, wacky stuff in the past and have good results. So
yeah, well, that's it.
There you go. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, James.
Well, thanks again to Steve for all the work and inspiration. And I'm already getting some good feedback from the video episode, so maybe our work will inspire one of you to do the same or something similar. If you do it, please let me know. I hope that you'll learn something from our brew, maybe to make yours better than than what we did. There's got to be a way. Maybe James in South Carolina will brew up an amazing pineapple wheat using the technique similar to what we did. Got to be a way. If there is a way, let us know. If you want to send us in that, or brewing questions, or show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, you can write to James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site, and our brewer's logbooks should be going to the printer, I hope, today. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store, too. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com, and if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the links are Parrot Tricks, teaching parrots with positive reinforcement, and Buckyballs, the amazing magnetic desk toy. Aren't Buckyballs those little bitty nanotechnology things? Named after Buckminster Fuller. Trying to earn some geek cred with the stuff that I know. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo or the Amazon.co.uk logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we appreciate your support. Don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association or subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Till then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.